I'm delighted that the first panel has generated such animated debate already. It gives me confidence that by the end of the day we'll have solved all the problems. We just need to remember to write the answers down. It's a real privilege for me to be able to introduce the Secretary of State for Defence to the stage this morning to hear his thoughts. As we have already alluded to, and no doubt speakers will allude to throughout the rest of the day and tomorrow, we live in challenging times. That is not a surprise. Global instability is on the rise. The world is changing faster. All of these are well-established truths and have captured both the attention of the Prime Minister, Secretary of State, and the Foreign Secretary in their statements in recent weeks. And so, not surprisingly, I really welcome that that has led to the government's commitment to increase to 2.5% of GDP on defence. It's both very welcome, it's very timely, and I believe it is going to be a genuinely catalytic moment because it allows us, both within defence, but also our defence industry partners and more broadly, to set plans and programmes going ahead with a confidence of financial commitment that allows us to make the sort of long-term changes that we really do need to make. Because as many of us have discussed over recent years, when you're operating in a kind of feast and famine, those longer-term plans can be very difficult to generate with confidence. And the risk picture shifts to one of caution. But the world we're in at the moment cannot afford that cautious approach. It cannot afford a short-term thinking. What it actually demands from us is something that accelerates the speed at which we do things. And in going faster, inevitably, we have to be more comfortable with our concepts of risk. And in order to be comfortable with risk and investment opportunities, we therefore need a security of funding going ahead. So I genuinely mean it when I say, as head of the Royal Navy and alongside my fellow service chiefs, this is a very welcome announcement. And I can report that at the Chiefs of European Navies gathering last week in Slovenia, Europe's shortest coastline, but one of its most beautiful countries, it was having a catalytic impact upon some of our allies and friends. So it was an evidence of UK leadership. But the solution space, as no doubt we'll discuss over the next few days, isn't one that just sits within defence. And as I mentioned very briefly earlier, it is something that we need to establish across the nation. When the Prime Minister launched the recent command paper talking about the nuclear deterrent as a national endeavour, this was both something really unusual in recent times, because it was an overt commitment and conversation about what it means to be a nuclear weapon-owning nation, and there are few of us in the world and only 3 in NATO. But it also got out into the open what it means to invest properly as a national endeavour into delivering our security. And I pay tribute to my colleague, Maddie McTurnan, Chief of Defence Nuclear, who's done so much with her cross-government connectivity to drive this forward. But actually, it's a maritime conversation. It's not just a nuclear conversation. It's one that talks about how the fabric of this great nation will pull together all of its strengths, all of its talents, to ensure that everything that extends from our coastline and going ahead is secure, is resilient, and designed around our economic prosperity. And so we are working as a Navy and Defence across business, industry, charities, the RNLI, to maximise our ability to monitor and defend our interests at sea. Those interests always used to be thought of as being abroad and afar. We were permanently playing an away game. People say we never see the Navy. Well, that's because we're over the horizon. We're gone, we're deployed to far off seas. But actually, that threat is moving ever present and ever closer. And as we've seen from the Nord Stream 2 attacks that occurred a few years ago, actually, we can be challenged almost in our backwaters, as Norway found. And the Norwegian response was really instructive, because what they did was pull together commerce, government, defence, to construct a coordinated and coherent response to this threat, recognising that no one part of the Norwegian ecosystem could deliver that answer, but working together they could produce something so much more resilient. And I believe that that is the sort of model that we could learn so much from and take forward. We have a part to play in that, and the Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship Proteus, which is moored just outside Belfast at the moment, which I know many of you will visit, is just one example of how we are trying to break some of the old paradigms and set up a new one. A ship bought within a year of the idea being done. We didn't design it from scratch, we saw what was available on the market, and it is one in which we're going to develop and prove the new integrated procurement model that the Minister for Defence Procurement, James Cartledge, has forged forward. Agile, adaptable, fail fast, learn more, move on. And this is part of the broader response. But none of our response can be delivered without the extraordinary efforts of the sailors and marines that I am privileged to lead across the service, regulars, reservists, and our wonderful civil service and industrial partners, and also the families who support them. There are some who are putting up with quite extraordinary sacrifice at the moment, and I pay tribute to them. And what we have to do is to forge ahead and to demonstrate that actually we are building a new and better Navy. It needs to be better because the challenges are getting more considerate. It's going to be new because many of our ships and platforms are getting older. That's a truth. No doubt you can challenge it, but it is what it is. And we need to be able to demonstrate that we are responding and making the step change into the future that the nation would expect and that the government has charged me and my colleagues on the Navy Board to lead. And in order to hear a little bit more about that charge and the orders that we receive, can I introduce the Right Honourable Grant Shapps, Secretary of State for Defence. Welcome, sir.
First Sea Lord Ben, thank you very much indeed. 2 weeks after I became Defence Secretary, a Storm Shadow slammed into a Russian Kilo-class submarine in occupied naval base in Sevastopol, Crimea. Just over a month later, the destroyer USS Carney intercepted 3 missiles and 8 drones in the Red Sea launched by the Houthi militant group. And before the year was out, the incredible crew on HMS Diamond were themselves intercepting multiple Houthi attack drones, all as part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. As many of you will know, this was the first time the Royal Navy had fired anti-air engagement for more than 3 decades. Something they've subsequently had to repeat on multiple occasions. And when I met with the ship's company aboard HMS Diamond in the Red Sea in January, I was able to thank them for their commitment, their courage, and their professionalism, and for everything that they're doing to protect freedom of navigation and therefore prices and shops at home. And speaking to them, I reflected on the absolutely essential role of our Royal Navy in our national security, in the world order, and in our broader way of life. Now, the situation that unfolded in the Red and in the Black Seas has challenged some of our long-held assumptions. But it's also confirmed the path that we're taking to modernize our Royal Navy and know that that is the right thing to do. And today, I want to explore both sides of that same coin. Now, not long ago, big states with big navies dominated maritime security. However, with almost 30% of Russia's Black Sea fleet either damaged or destroyed, and the rest cowering out of reach of Ukraine's ghost fleets of missiles and drones, and with the Houthis primarily using inexpensive drones to place a chokehold on global trade worth around $1 trillion a day, it is clear, very clear, that we are operating in a new military age. And so the question we must ask ourselves is, how do we ensure we don't find ourselves on the back foot in any future naval conflict, just as Russia has in the Black Sea? But also, how do we retain freedom of navigation when under attack by those hell-bent on holding global shipping lanes hostage? Well, part of the answer resides in recent decisions made by the government to help overcome these challenges. In particular, our move to a quicker, much more agile pan-defense procurement model, and our decision to ring-fence at least 5% of our defense budget for R&D over the next few years. These steps will help to deliver the technological edge we need in the years ahead, such as the Dragonfire laser, which we've said will now be delivered 5 years ahead of schedule in 2027, helping us preserve our naval strength and capability, not just in times of peace, but also in times of tension and times of war. Now, of course, chief among our capabilities is our continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent, now in its 55th year of unceasing operation, making the Royal Navy the cornerstone of our national defences and of our national security. To protect that legacy, we're investing up to £41 billion in our next generation dreadnought fleet and making good progress with our UK nuclear replacement warheads, and thanks to Maddie. Meanwhile, our astute class of conventionally armed, nuclear-powered hunter-killer submarines continue to roll off the production lines, with 5 now complete and able to hit threats on land with Tomahawk cruise missiles and threats below water with the Spearfish torpedoes. I had the pleasure to tour HMS Astute in Scotland last Thursday and heard about how the best-in-class weapons capability will be used. But last month, in March, I was also in Australia, seeing how we're making significant progress in our partnership with the next generation attack submarine SSN AUKUS. And it's great to have our friends here from Australia today. All of which brings me to the second lesson from events in the Red and the Black Seas, the importance of alliances with like-minded partners. And in terms of naval alliances, I believe we're more integrated with a wider range of global partners than ever before. In Europe and the Atlantic, our carrier strike group, headed by HMS Prince of Wales, and the Fleet Air Arm, alongside 7 other British vessels, and more than 2,000 sailors and Marines, including 45 commandos, recently made our Royal Navy the dominant naval component of NATO's exercise Steadfast Defender. And meanwhile, in the Mediterranean, RFA Lyme Bay has delivered life-saving UK aid to Gaza. And in the Red Sea, HMS Richmond, Diamond, and Lancaster, alongside RFA Cardigan Bay, have cooperated flawlessly with our US counterparts. In the Indian Ocean, RFA Lyme Bay, RFA Argus have been conducting training and regional engagement with our elite Royal Marines. And further east, HMS Spey and HMS Tamar have enforced sanctions against North Korea, supported freedom of navigation in the Taiwan Straits, and safeguarded critical infrastructure in the Indo-Pacific. Simultaneously, in the Caribbean, HMS Trent has worked with US authorities to conduct major drug busts, resulting in seizures worth around £500 million. And all the while, HMS Forth is permanently patrolling around the Falklands. Yet despite this global footprint, there are those who argue that we should somehow lower or shrink our horizons, and perhaps concentrate on security in our Euro-Atlantic backyard. Well, I have to tell you, I fundamentally disagree. Our island nation is exposed to the world order, and when household finances and our economy are so dependent on global trade, we simply cannot afford to have anything other than a global perspective on the world. And as shipping lanes in the Arctic become increasingly available, the need for like-minded democracies to protect freedom of navigation is only likely to increase. This necessity to both think and act globally reinforces the need to make interoperability the cornerstone of our naval partnerships. And to continue to do that, we have to get the nuts and bolts of the operations right. And that starts with expert and motivated people. As someone who arrived at the MOD with my eyes very much wide open about the recruitment challenges facing defence, I believe the ministry is finally gripping these issues through the Haythornthwaite Review. We are already well into the implementation, and Royal Navy applications, job applications, are up. Our new recruit training facilities are the busiest they've been in 8 years, thank goodness. And we've more than halved the processing time. So that's an important part of it, but we also need to retain personnel as well. And that's why we've committed to invest over £4 billion into military accommodation over the next decade. And importantly, we're also increasing remuneration. So the lowest paid will be about 10% better off. In fact, they are this year, with free wraparound childcare for service families, the service pupil premium, plus our ongoing reforms to make careers more flexible and much more rewarding. Now, the other side to all of this is the kit, the big part of the equation. And our transformation to ensure we're high capability, fully interoperable, and digital is essential to our future. In a few weeks' time, the eyes of the world will turn to Portsmouth to mark D-Day 80. In advance of that anniversary and the most extraordinary amphibious landings of all time, I'm delighted to announce today that I have given the green light for the acquisition of up to 6 new multi-role support ships. These will replace all of our current amphibious fleet, providing more flexibility, more cutting-edge technology, and better support to our amphibious and littoral strike operations. Now, these ships will ensure our extraordinary Royal Marines have the versatility, the heavy lift capability that they need to continue being the best. Per mare, per terrem. Apologies for my Italian, but by sea and by land. The generations of commandos in the future will have the ships that they need. The MRSS program is an important milestone in our future Commando Force modernization program. And it takes the total number of Royal Navy vessels in design, in order, or under construction to 28, which will require a very big expansion of our shipbuilding capacity, because I'm determined that these ships are built here in the UK. And to ensure that we have the skills that are needed, we're in negotiations to sell HMS Argyle, which has served so brilliantly, but it has to be said, for about twice the lifespan intended, to BAE Systems, for them to use as a training facility for apprentices, establishing a new shipbuilding academy as a major boost for the sector, and a major boost for skills and for jobs, and a major boost for Scotland. Our commitment to MRSS and up to 28 new ships and subs for the Royal Navy really does cement this as a new golden age of British shipbuilding. Turning the tide on a shrinking fleet, securing tens of thousands of jobs in coastal areas across the UK, equipping our country with the next generation of nuclear deterrent, equipping our Royal Marines with new versatile warships. Events in the Red Sea really do highlight the need for sea-to-land capability. So today I can announce that in the future we'll be equipping our Royal Navy Type 26 and Type 31 frigates with land strike capability, ensuring our Royal Navy can protect our interests, get the job done wherever and whenever they're called upon to do so. And furthermore, in the new golden age of shipbuilding, this is also a new golden age for shipbuilding exports, demonstrated by the fact that in the past decade, the value of naval exports from UK shipbuilders has been greater than any other country in the world. And the number of exports currently is also greater than any other country. Now, earlier I said our continuous at-sea deterrent made the Royal Navy the cornerstone of national defences and our national security. That, I have to say, actually underplays its role. You might ask why. Well, sometimes people will claim there's no real point in our nuclear deterrent, but actually in this job, I know that they are wrong. Without our continuous at-sea deterrent, we might be less likely, less willing to intervene for good in the world. Let me ask you this question. Would Ben Wallace and I have been so willing to be able to play a leadership role in Ukraine without the insurance of our continuous at-sea deterrent? Would UK defence have given Ukraine the NLAWs, the storm shadows needed to defeat Russia's invasion without our continuous at-sea deterrent? Which begs the question, would Ukraine even still be in this fight for their freedom and their sovereignty without the confidence that that deterrent delivers to us? Now, I know for a fact that gifting Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine have enabled our brave Ukrainian friends to push back Russia, reclaim the Black Sea, restart grain exports, and make food cheaper and more accessible for some of the poorest people in the world. And that decision has been made immensely easier because of our continuous at-sea deterrent. But it's not just about equipment. I also know that taking decisions to stand up to the Houthis is much easier when I know we have the most professional and committed navy in the world to call upon. Now, 4 months ago, standing right here in Lancaster House, I made a speech in which I warned we're living in a far more dangerous world. Post-war to pre-war, I said. And I started a national conversation with others about defence spending. Last month, the Prime Minister increased our defence budget to 2.5% of GDP, delivering a £75 billion boost to defences over the next 6 years. That will help fund our next generation of nuclear capability, a new golden age of shipbuilding, securing the place of the Royal Navy at the heart of our national defences for decades to come. Those listening know the defence of the realm is quite simply the first job of any government. But you can't just wish for it. It requires you to commit the resources to it and set out a plan for how you'll pay for it as well, which is exactly what this government has done. So I want to directly address every single member of our Royal Navy to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you do and that you'll continue to do. Not just for our security, freedoms and prosperity, but for the security, freedom and prosperity of people right across the world. To those brave men and women, I say you are simply world class. Thank you.